What if I told you that helping one stranger on a busy street could change your entire life forever? Have you ever walked past someone who needed help but hesitated, wondering if getting involved was worth the risk? Today, I'm sharing a story about a homeless girl named Saad and a blind man named Harold that will completely shift how you see kindness, wealth, and the power of human connection. Picture this: a teenage girl sleeping beneath a cold bench, watching millionaires in designer suits rush past her every single day, completely invisible to their world. But what happened when she chose compassion over self-preservation will leave you speechless. If this story already has you curious about the extraordinary power of ordinary kindness, go ahead and hit that like button, because what you're about to hear will stay with you long after this video ends. Saad had called the city streets home for weeks, and every morning felt like a battle for survival. Her entire world fit into a battered backpack. A few clothes, a worn blanket, and the remnant of family photos she couldn't bear to throw away. The bench she slept under sat along one of the busiest walkways downtown, where glass towers stretched toward the sky, and success stories were written in every hurried footstep. But here's what struck me most about Saada's situation. She had become a master of invisibility. Day after day, she watched streams of office workers flow past her like water around a stone. Bluetooth headphones blocked out her existence. Smartphone screens created barriers between her reality and theirs. To them, she was part of the urban landscape, as permanent and unremarkable as a bench itself. The psychological toll was crushing. Imagine losing your parents before you even graduate high school, then bouncing between overcrowded shelters where your belongings disappear and your trust slowly erodes. Friends who promised to stay in touch vanished when their own struggles took priority. Saad had learned to guard her spirit like a precious resource, rationing hope because disappointment hurt too much when you had nothing left to lose. This city had a way of teaching harsh lessons about human nature. The same people who donated thousands to charity galas would step over someone asking for help. Disability and poverty were treated like contagious diseases, conditions that made others uncomfortable enough to look away, cross the street, or pretend they didn't notice. The unspoken rule was simple: don't get involved, don't make eye contact, don't complicate your day with someone else's problems. But sometimes the universe has other plans. Comment below if you've ever felt completely invisible in a crowd, because what happened next proves that being seen, truly seen, can change everything. On this particular chilly afternoon, Saad noticed something different in the usual parade of indifference. A man was making his way along the crowded path, guided by a white cane and accompanied by an old Labrador with graying fur around his muzzle. He wore faded jeans that had seen better years and an oversized jacket that swallowed his thin frame. Everything about his appearance suggested struggle, the uncertainty in his movements, the hesitation at every corner, the way he held his head slightly tilted, as if constantly listening for danger. The crowd's reaction was predictably harsh. People parted around him like he carried some invisible plague, muttering complaints about having to adjust their precious routes. "Watch where you're going," someone snapped, despite the obvious white cane. Another person made a crude joke about blind leading the blind that earned uncomfortable laughter from their companion. The man's shoulders sagged slightly with each cruel comment, but he kept moving forward with quiet dignity. His loyal Labrador stayed close, occasionally nudging his leg when obstacles appeared. But even the most well-trained service dog couldn't shield against human cruelty. The man's name was Harold, though Saad didn't know that yet. All she saw was someone navigating a world designed to exclude him, facing the same invisibility that had become her daily reality. Something stirred in Saada's chest, a feeling she'd been trying to suppress for weeks. Despite having every reason to focus solely on her own survival, despite learning that the world rarely rewarded kindness, she found herself standing up from her makeshift shelter. Her legs felt unsteady after sitting for hours, but her resolve was crystal clear. "Do you need help crossing?" she asked gently, her voice cutting through the noise of traffic and indifferent chatter. Harold stopped, turning toward the sound of her voice with surprise. When was the last time someone had offered help instead of judgment? His weathered face softened into something approaching relief. "That would be very kind," he replied, and Saad noticed how carefully he chose his words, as if kindness were a rare gift he didn't want to mishandle. She positioned herself beside him, describing what she saw. There's a crosswalk about 10 feet ahead. The light is red right now, but I'll let you know when it changes. There's a small crowd waiting, so we'll have company crossing." Her voice carried the gentle authority of someone who understood what it meant to navigate an unwelcoming world. When the light turned green, she guided him forward, describing the slope of the curb. The texture changed from concrete to asphalt. Even the way the afternoon sun was warming the brick buildings around them. Harold's dog seemed to approve of this new ally, tail wagging slightly as they reached the other side safely. But instead of parting ways, something unexpected happened. Harold asked if she'd like to sit with him for a while, gesturing toward a nearby bench. In a city where everyone was perpetually rushing toward their next obligation, the invitation to simply exist together felt revolutionary. They sat in companionable silence for a moment. Two people who understood what it meant to be overlooked by society. Then, slowly, carefully, they began to share pieces of their stories. Saad found herself talking about losing her parents in a car accident, about aging out a foster system that was never equipped to handle her grief, about the friends who had promised to stay in touch but gradually faded from her life as their own challenges took priority. Harold listened with an intensity that was both healing and unsettling. When was the last time someone had asked follow-up questions about her experiences? When had anyone shown genuine curiosity about her thoughts, her dreams, her perspective on the world? He didn't offer empty platitudes or quick solutions. Instead, he asked thoughtful questions. What was the hardest part about losing your parents? What keeps you hopeful on the difficult days? What would help feel like to you right now? For the first time in months, Saad experienced something she'd almost forgotten existed. The feeling that someone cared. Not the performative caring of social workers with too many cases, or the guilty caring of people who dropped coins and hurried away. This was genuine human interest in her well-being, her story, her worth as a person. Share this video if you believe in the power of human connection, because what happened next will prove that sometimes the most extraordinary transformations begin with the simplest acts of compassion. As the afternoon stretched into evening, they reluctantly parted ways. Harold thanked her again for her help, and something in his voice suggested their encounter had meant as much to him as it had to her. Saad returned to her bench that night, feeling different. Lighter somehow, despite nothing material having changed about her circumstances. But the next evening brought a shock that would alter the trajectory of her entire life. Saad was settling into her usual spot when she noticed an unusual commotion near the crosswalk where she'd helped Harold the day before. Bright lights illuminated the area, and a small crowd had gathered around television cameras and reporters. Her heart dropped as she recognized a familiar figure at the center of attention, Harold, but somehow transformed. Gone was the uncertainty from the previous day. He stood confidently before the microphones, his posture straight and authoritative. The same faded jeans and oversized jacket now seemed like costume pieces rather than signs of poverty. His loyal Labrador sat calmly beside him, no longer just a service dog, but clearly a well-trained companion in some elaborate performance. "Ladies and gentlemen," a reporter was saying, "we're here with Harold Morrison, founder and CEO of Morrison Technologies, one of the city's most successful tech companies. Mr. Morrison, can you tell us about your latest social experiment?" Sada's world tilted on its axis. The man she'd helped cross the street, the vulnerable stranger who'd listened to her stories with such genuine care, was a millionaire tech entrepreneur. Everything she thought she knew about their encounter suddenly required re-examination. Harold's voice carried clearly over the evening air as he explained his mission. "For the past 6 months, I've been conducting what I call blind walks throughout the city. I disguise myself and navigate public spaces exactly as I would normally, using my white cane and accompanied by my service dog. The goal is to understand how our society truly treats people with disabilities and those experiencing poverty." The crowd murmured with interest as Harold continued. "Most people either ignore me completely or offer spare change without making eye contact. Some make cruel comments, treating my disability as an inconvenience to their day. Yesterday, however, something extraordinary happened that reminded me why I started this project in the first place." Saad felt her cheeks burning as Harold's gaze seemed to skim the crowd, as if searching for someone specific. "A young woman approached me with genuine kindness. She didn't offer money or pity. Instead, she offered her time, her attention, and her respect. She guided me safely across a busy intersection, then sat with me and shared her own story with remarkable courage and wisdom. The reporter leaned forward eagerly. "Can you tell us more about this encounter?" Hit subscribe if this story is changing how you see kindness, because Harold's next words would transform Sada's life in ways she never could have imagined. "This young woman taught me something I've forgotten in my years of success," Harold continued, his voice thick with emotion. "True wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or stock options. It's measured in our capacity for compassion, our willingness to see the humanity in others, especially when we have every reason to focus solely on our own struggles." He paused, and Saad could swear his unseeing eyes were looking directly at her hiding spot behind the crowd. She was experiencing homelessness, facing challenges I can only imagine, yet she chose to help a stranger who appeared to have nothing to offer in return. That level of character, that instinctive kindness, it's rarer than any precious metal and more valuable than any technology I've ever developed. The reporter pressed for more details. "What impact has this encounter had on your foundation's work?" "It's completely refocused our mission," Harold replied without hesitation. "Tomorrow, we're announcing a major expansion of our program supporting both homeless youth and individuals with disabilities. But more importantly, I'd like to publicly thank that remarkable young woman, Saad. If you're watching this, I hope you know that your kindness didn't go unnoticed or unrewarded." Sada's knees nearly buckled. He was talking about her on live television, saying her name to thousands of viewers, treating her act of basic human decency like something heroic. Harold continued, "Saad, I'd like to offer you not just financial assistance, but something much more valuable, a position with my foundation, working directly with homeless youth and people with disabilities. Your lived experience, combined with your natural empathy, makes you uniquely qualified to help others navigate the challenges you face yourself." The crowd erupted in applause, but Saad barely heard them. Her mind was racing, trying to process the magnitude of what was happening. In less than 24 hours, she'd gone from invisible to invaluable, from homeless to employed, from forgotten to celebrated on live television. But perhaps most importantly, she'd learned a truth that would guide the rest of her life. True riches aren't visible to the eye. Harold had appeared poor and vulnerable, but possessed wealth beyond measure. She had appeared to have nothing, but carried compassion that proved priceless. As the news crew packed up their equipment and the crowd dispersed, Harold remained behind. Somehow, despite his blindness, he found his way directly to where Saad stood frozen in shock and disbelief. "I hoped you'd be here," he said softly, that same gentle voice that had made her feel heard the day before. "Would you like to grab coffee and talk about changing the world together?" For the second time in 2 days, Saad found herself saying yes to a stranger. But this time, she understood that acts of kindness create ripples that extend far beyond our ability to see or predict their impact. 6 months later, Saad was running Harold's Youth Outreach Program, using her own experiences to connect with teenagers aging out of foster care, helping them navigate the complex systems she'd once faced alone. Her apartment was small but safe, her work meaningful but challenging. More importantly, she'd learned that helping others had helped heal parts of herself she didn't even realize were broken. The story of Saad and Harold teaches us that compassion is the ultimate currency. It multiplies when spent, appreciates over time, and pays dividends we never expect. Sometimes a stranger you help might change your life, but more often, the act of helping changes you in ways that matter more than any external reward. What's one small act of kindness you can do today? It doesn't have to be dramatic or expensive. Sometimes the most powerful gift you can give someone is the simple recognition that they exist, they matter, and they deserve to be treated with dignity. Subscribe for more stories that prove humanity still exists, and comment below with your own story of unexpected kindness. Because in a world that often feels divided and cold, these reminders that people still care for each other are exactly what we all need to see. Remember, you never know when helping one stranger might change everything. The question isn't whether you can afford to be kind, it's whether you can afford not to be.